For my promotion celebration, my fiancé handed me a breakup letter. From all of us, her mom announced at the restaurant. Her brother filmed my reaction. I just nodded, took the letter, and walked out. They had no idea what I'd already done. For my promotion celebration, my fiancé handed me a breakup letter. Not in private, not in the car afterward. Not even outside the restaurant, where she could at least pretend to have a conscience. At the table. In front of my captain, 2 assistant district attorneys, 3 of her family friends, and half the restaurant staff. She slid a cream-colored envelope across the white tablecloth, her nails perfectly polished, her expression almost gentle. Read it, Job. Her mother lifted her glass before I could touch the envelope. From all of us, she announced brightly, like she was introducing a toast instead of a public execution. Her brother Tate stood 2 steps away, openly filming me with his phone. I looked at him, then at the envelope, then at Celeste, my fiancée, or more accurately, the woman who had spent the last 3 months helping her family build a trap around me. I nodded once, took the letter, stood up, and walked out. No shouting, no argument, no broken glass. No public breakdown for Tate's little video. Just a quiet exit. Behind me, I heard Celeste's mother say, "Wait, that's it?" And Tate mutter, annoyed, "Keep recording. He'll crack outside." He had no idea I'd already beaten them to the truth. Outside, the spring air felt colder than it should have. Rain shimmered across the parking lot in silver streaks, and the city lights bled into the wet pavement. I got into my car, placed the envelope on the passenger seat, and stared through the windshield for a long second. Then I opened the glove compartment and took out a black file. Inside was everything I needed. Bank transfers, property records, copies of insurance revisions, screenshots, call logs, a private investigator's report, and, best of all, a flash drive containing an audio recording that would tear apart the polished little lie Celeste and her family had worked so hard to construct. My phone buzzed. "Captain Hargrove," I answered. "You okay?" he asked. "Yes." That's not what I asked. I glanced back at the restaurant windows. Tate had come outside now, spinning in a slow circle with his phone raised, like he expected to catch me collapsing dramatically near a decorative shrub. "I'm fine," I said. They were hoping for theater. "And I'm not giving them any." A pause. Then Hargrove said, "Good. Because if you're right about this family, tonight was just phase 1. He was right. The breakup letter wasn't revenge. It was strategy. And I had known that before Celeste ever touched the envelope. My name is Job Mercer. I'm a detective in major crimes. People think being a detective means you're naturally suspicious. That isn't exactly true. What it really means is that eventually, after enough lies, enough tears, enough rehearsed innocence, you stop listening to what people say and start listening to what they arrange. And the Wren family arranged everything. They arranged their smiles, their charitable image, their old money manners, their strategic generosity, even their concern always arrived polished, dressed in silk and false sincerity. When I met Celeste Wren, she looked like the kind of woman who belonged in magazine profiles about elegant philanthropy and impossible success. She had perfect posture, a sharp mind, and a voice that could make even a cold remark sound like a compliment. She knew judges by their first names, spoke casually about museum boards, and could walk into any room and make everyone lean toward her. I met her at a children's hospital fundraiser, the kind of event where wealthy people spend thousands of dollars to feel noble under crystal chandeliers. She made me laugh. I made her curious. That was enough to start. A year later, we were engaged. Everyone said we were perfect together. That alone should have worried me. Nothing truly dangerous ever introduces itself as dangerous. It shows up looking impressive, expensive, and convenient. At first, the warnings were small. Celeste's mother, Vivian, once asked me, while smiling over dessert, whether I had updated my life insurance beneficiary since my last serious relationship. I laughed, because it was such an absurd dinner question. She laughed too, but she never answered when I asked why she wanted to know. Then her father, Graham, suggested I let his firm streamline my estate documents before the wedding. He called it good planning. Said family alignment mattered. Said marriage was the ideal moment to simplify legal structures. Then Tate, her idiot younger brother, asked me whether my apartment garage had security cameras and whether they covered all entrances or only the elevator lobby. He asked it with fake casualness, the same tone men use when pretending not to care about information they absolutely plan to misuse. At the time, I still told myself I was overthinking. Then, one night, Celeste left her phone on my kitchen counter while she took a shower. The screen lit up with a message preview from her mother. Did he sign the insurance change yet? Dad says before the wedding is safer. Safer. That word stayed with me. When Celeste came back into the kitchen, I simply asked, "Why is your mother talking about my insurance?" Celeste didn't blink. My father spent decades in estate law. They talk about policies the way other families talk about weather. Most families don't call paperwork safer before a wedding. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "You make everything sound sinister, detective." Maybe I did, but only because it was starting to sound that way. I didn't confront her. That would have been stupid. Confrontation only works when the other side is capable of shame, and I was beginning to suspect the Wrens treated shame the way rich people treat public transportation. Something unfortunate that happens to others. So, I started quietly checking what I legally could. Public records first. Then property records, insurance filings, debt actions, shell companies, political donations, and civil cases. The more I looked, the uglier it got. The Wrens were not broke, but they were bleeding. Their development company had hidden liabilities. 2 pending lawsuits had been delayed through procedural tricks. 1 trust had been quietly restructured. And Celeste herself had several debts she never mentioned. Private loans, quiet guarantees, and a bad investment tied to an ex-boyfriend whose failed business had left a trail of financial damage. The marriage, I realized, wasn't about love. It was about stabilization. My promotion made me more useful to them. My signature made me accessible. And depending on how the policies were arranged, my death could become profitable. That was the moment I stopped thinking of the situation as troubling and started thinking of it as a case. I told only 3 people: Captain Hargrove, my partner, Detective Lena Ortiz, and Martin Voss, a private investigator who looked permanently disappointed in humanity and had the useful habit of finding things rich people thought were invisible. Lena read my preliminary file in silence, then set it down and said, "Congratulations. You're not engaged. You're being processed." Hargrove was less poetic. "If this family is trying to box you into financial exposure and destabilize you professionally, we go careful," he said. "No grandstanding, no shortcuts. You move like a detective, not a wounded fiancé." That was the advantage I had over them. They thought they were setting up a man in love. They were actually playing against a detective who had already stopped trusting the room. 3 weeks before the restaurant dinner, Celeste pushed a folder toward me in my apartment. "A few premarital documents," she said. "Routine things." I opened the folder and scanned just enough to know they weren't routine. Beneficiary revisions, joint authority provisions, emergency access clauses, a draft that would have made untangling certain accounts after marriage unnecessarily messy. Messy enough to benefit whoever moved first. I closed the folder. My attorney reviews anything I sign. Her smile chilled by half a degree. "It's just planning. Then independent review won't hurt. Job. This isn't adversarial." "No," I said. "Not if nobody's trying to trap me." That was the first real crack between us. That night, she barely spoke to me. The next morning, one of our mutual friends texted to ask whether everything was okay because Celeste seemed worried about my stress level. Worried. There it was. They had changed tactics. If they couldn't get my signature willingly, they'd begin shaping the narrative. Over the next few days, tiny rumors surfaced with almost comical precision. Job has been intense lately. Job is spiraling from work. Job sees threats everywhere. Job is obsessed with control. None of it specific enough to challenge directly. All of it designed to make future accusations sound believable. Lena listened to one of the stories being relayed through a mutual acquaintance and snorted. They're softening the ground. When people plan a lie, they always lay emotional carpet first. She was right. A week later, Voss delivered the piece that turned suspicion into certainty. Celeste had met twice with an insurance broker connected to one of her father's old professional circles. The broker specialized in wealth continuity structures, which is exactly the kind of phrase that should make normal people leave the room. One email chain discussed my policies. Another discussed optimal timing around legal union. A third, saved by a miserable assistant who clearly hated everyone in that office, contained the sentence, "The event of spousal loss within the first phase of alignment can be administratively sensitive, but still highly recoverable if structures are pre-positioned." I read it 3 times. Then I laughed once, because the alternative was smashing my coffee mug through a wall. Spousal loss. Administratively sensitive. Highly recoverable. Only rich parasites could turn the possibility of a husband's death into something that sounded like a filing inconvenience. Still, emails weren't enough. I needed direct proof of intent, of coordination. And because the universe occasionally rewards patience, Celeste gave me exactly that. 2 weeks before my promotion dinner, Celeste took a call in my study while she thought I was out. I wasn't out. I was downstairs, meeting a building technician about security upgrades after Tate's suspicious questions about my garage. My study computer, however, was connected to my dictation system for case notes. Earlier that day, I had activated the room mic to test audio pickup. When I reviewed the recording later that night, I heard Celeste's voice first. "He still hasn't signed anything," she said. Then Vivian, speakerphone and unmistakable. "Then we proceed with the dinner." Tate's voice cut in. "I'll film it. If he explodes, great. If he storms out, even better." Silent rage plays really well when you caption it right. Then Graham. "Afterward, we present the breakup as a protective decision based on escalating instability. No dramatics. Let him create the impression." Celeste said, "And if he doesn't," Vivian answered. "Proud men always react when humiliated publicly." Then Celeste asked the question that turned my blood cold. "And the insurance issue?" Graham replied, "That becomes relevant only if he remains useful." The room fell silent after that. On the recording, I could hear ice clinking in a glass. Someone laughed softly. I sat at my kitchen table listening to it, my hands perfectly still. Lena listened right after me. When it ended, she leaned back and said, "Well, that's horrifying." A beat later, she added, "And Tate thinks he's a documentary filmmaker. That almost makes it worse." From that point on, the engagement was dead. I simply hadn't buried it yet. The restaurant dinner was their move. They thought it would accomplish 3 things at once: humiliate me in public, create footage of a reaction they could use, and frame Celeste as a graceful woman escaping a dangerous fiancé. Instead, it gave me a final piece of evidence: premeditated public provocation. That's why I walked out, not because I was stunned, because I refused to hand them the scene they had written. The next morning, I finally read the breakup letter. It was unbearable. 4 pages of polished nonsense. According to Celeste, I had become emotionally surveillant, psychologically unsafe, and fixated on death, control, and legal structures. One sentence said she was leaving to protect her peace. Another claimed my professional suspicion had infected the relationship. By the 3rd paragraph, I was laughing. By the 4th, I knew Tate had helped write it because no adult man over the age of 15 would sincerely use the phrase healing and accountability journey unless he had been hit in the head with too many podcasts. Lena came over, read the letter, and said, "I need this entered into evidence for crimes against language." But the best part came that afternoon. Tate posted a black and white video clip from the restaurant with moody piano music and the caption, "Sometimes love means choosing peace." He deleted it 11 minutes later. Unfortunately for him, 11 minutes is forever when people are screenshotting. We archived everything. Then Graham made his mistake. He contacted internal review at my department, expressing concern over my emotional stability and suggesting my promotion be reevaluated in light of a disturbing relational breakdown. That was it. The moment private cruelty turned into institutional manipulation. My captain sent me the message with 2 words: "Now we move." The board meeting happened 3 days later. Present were Deputy Commissioner Hall, Internal Legal, my department counsel, Captain Hargrove, me, And because arrogance makes men brave in stupid ways, Graham Wren himself. He spoke first. He was calm, grave, almost fatherly. He talked about concern, about emotional instability, about Celeste fearing my intensity, about the breakup dinner taking place in public for her safety. Tate had literally prepared captions for multiple versions of my reaction. When Graham finished, Hall looked at me. Detective Mercer? I placed the breakup letter on the table first, then the transcript of the study recording, then the archived restaurant video, then the email chain involving the insurance broker, then the debt summary and document timeline. No speech, no dramatic pause, just evidence. We played the audio. Celeste's voice, Vivian's voice, Tate sounding excited about filming me, Graham calmly discussing how to shape the breakup into a narrative that could damage me professionally. When it ended, no one spoke for several seconds. Then Hall turned to Graham. Is there context? She asked. That improves this. He cleared his throat. Families under pressure speak inelegantly. Internal legal leaned forward. Did you knowingly contact this board while withholding evidence that your family had planned the public incident? Graham shifted in his chair. I acted to protect my daughter. Hall's eyes hardened. From what? Consequences? He didn't answer quickly enough. That was enough. Internal Affairs opened an inquiry before the meeting even formally ended. The district attorney's office opened its own review based on the financial angle. And the Wren family, for the first time in their well-dressed lives, discovered that polite phrasing does not become less criminal because it is spoken over expensive wine. Then came the excuses. My God, the excuses. Vivian requested a private conversation with counsel present and arrived wearing soft gray, as if dressing like tasteful grief would change the facts. Job, she said. I never wished you harm. You just discussed my death as an administrative possibility. She put a hand to her chest. That is a grotesque distortion. You used the word legacy. She actually winced. That was metaphorical. No, Vivian. Poetry is metaphorical. Insurance planning around a son-in-law is not. She tried tears next. They were elegant tears, carefully managed, like a sprinkler system for reputation. Then Tate spoke to investigators, and if I live to be 100, I will never forget his explanation. I wasn't filming to humiliate him, he said. I was preserving an authentic response environment. Even the investigator wrote that line down twice. Authentic response environment. The man had staged a breakup ambush, like a failed reality producer, and now wanted credit for journalism. Then Celeste called. I put her on speaker with Lena in the room. At first, she sounded soft, wounded, careful. Job. This has gotten out of hand. It got out of hand when your family tried to weaponize my promotion. You're making it uglier than it was. It was ugly. No, she snapped, finally losing patience. It was complicated. That was the first honest thing she had said in weeks. Complicated was true. Complicated debts, complicated lies, complicated greed. Then she said, we can still handle this quietly. That told me everything. Still no apology. Still negotiation. What do you want? I asked. I want you to stop treating this like some criminal conspiracy. I looked at Lena. Lena was already grinning. Celeste, I said, your brother made subfolders for possible reaction videos. A pause. Then, incredibly, she replied, Tate is dramatic. That doesn't make him malicious. Lena had to turn away because she was about to laugh loudly enough for Celeste to hear. I asked, and the insurance emails? Poor wording. The board complaint. Father was emotional. The recording in my study. Another pause. Then she said, with full sincerity, context matters. I closed my eyes. Of course she said that. People like Celeste always believe context is a magic wand. It doesn't matter what they did, because the true tragedy in their minds is how unfairly literal everyone else is being. The legal fallout took months, but the social collapse was immediate. Hospital boards distanced themselves from Vivian. Graham's firm quietly pushed him aside. The insurance broker came under review. And Tate, who had briefly attempted to paint himself online as a victim of narrative violence, became a joke in circles that previously invited him to all the best parties. One counsel aide reportedly saved his contact under authentic response environment. I hope that part is true. As for Celeste, She finally came to see me in person. No parents, no brother, no silk armor. She stood in my apartment, looking smaller than I remembered. Not innocent, just tired. "I did love you," she said. "Not enough." She looked away. I was in trouble. "I know. You don't know how bad." "Then tell me." So she did. The old debt, the pressure, the family expectations, the feeling that in her house, every relationship eventually became a transaction. For one brief moment, I could almost see the person she might have been if she'd grown up anywhere else. Then she ruined it. She said, "I thought if the dinner worked, maybe the rest wouldn't be necessary." I stared at her. The rest? She realized too late what she had said. Then, instead of answering, she gave me a tired little smile and said, "There's that detective voice again." I handed that conversation to the DA within the hour. I kept the breakup letter. Not because it hurt, because it reminded me. Warnings rarely arrive as warnings. Sometimes they come wrapped in luxury, smiling over candlelight, asking for trust and signatures. Months later, my promotion held. My name was cleared. The Wren family lost far more than social comfort. And me? I kept doing my job. Better, maybe. Cleaner. Colder in the right places. Captain Hargrove told me once, after all of it was mostly over, the only reason you survived that family is because when they tried to turn you into a victim, you stayed a detective. He was right. That was the difference. They thought they were humiliating a groom. They forgot they were performing in front of a man, trained to notice patterns, lies, and timing. They thought my silence at the restaurant meant shock. It meant I already had the case. So when people ask whether I regret not making a scene that night, I always tell them no. I don't regret it at all. Because by the time Celeste handed me that letter, I already knew what she was, what her family was, what they wanted. And when Tate stood there filming my reaction, grinning like he was about to capture the climax of the story, he didn't understand one beautiful thing. He was already in mine,